Welcome everyone to an episode of the Ol'Timers comic book show, where the hosts aren't old, but the comics most certainly are. Joining me this week for a walk down yesteryear, it is always the Professor.
Hey, what's up, Johnny?
Hey, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well.
Very good. And joining us again from his many travels around the multiverse, it is the 13th Crusader.
Yo, buenos días.
Buenos días, mi amigo.
Muy bien.
¿Dónde es 13th Crusader?
Even I don't know.
All right.
I'm like Quantum Leap, man. I don't know where I'm going to appear next.
Yeah. Are you trying to put right the things that once went wrong?
Absolutely.
Oh, man.
Not like Booster Gold, though, when he teleported himself to the time of the Killing Joke, though. I'm not that dumb.
Oh, wow. No, Booster is...
Remember that 0 hour experience?
No. Thank God. Thank God we didn't talk about that last time. Whew.
Yeah, we did talk about 0 hour, but not
we did
that
talk
issue.
about 0 hour. Yeah, we did.
Mm-hmm.
Good fun. Ironically, I've got to tell you this. Serendipity kicks in massively. I recently did an Outside the Panels with Michael Katz, and his artist is Darryl Banks, and he's the guy that did the covers for Green Lantern. You know, the massive hands with the rings on. I was like,
Yeah.
How's that possible? We were just talking about that book like 3 days ago, and now I'm doing an interview with the guy who has that artist on his book. I was like, man. You know,
That's we do that a lot, Johnny.
I think we're for a bunch of old timers. I think we're ahead of the game a little bit. Yeah,
tragically hip. That's what I call ourselves.
Tragically hip.
It's the name of a band. That's a good band name.
Yeah. Probably more like tragically thrown out a hip.
Yeah. Agreed.
That's also true. Yeah.
It is.
Let me just rearrange myself here because my hip is hurting.
Oh, there you go. How do I know? Well, it's hips be square. So, it is Super Bowl weekend. This is the last show we can legitimately talk about football without making tenuous leaps. So this pod drops after the Super Bowl. So some of us will have some early predictions now, and that way some of us will look like geniuses and some of us will look like idiots. I'll start us off. I'm going Niners by 11, 31-20. There you go. Professor?
I'm going to be rooting for the 49ers, but I think the Chiefs are going to take it. It's going to be close, and I don't even want to give you a score, but I think it's going to be close.
Okay, cool. 13?
I want the 49ers to win, but I say Chiefs by 13 and no wardrobe malfunction for Taylor Swift.
I never know. Niners wish might dump Kelsey and go for Little instead. I don't know. All right. This show around is my fault. We didn't have a theme. I kind of dropped the ball on this one, very much like a Kansas City Chief receiver. So we've gone for randoms this week. We've gone for books that are just all over the show. And as predicted, mine is predictably random, to say the least. That said, we've managed to, by hook or by crook, we've got a Marvel book, a DC book, and an independent book. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty good. Yeah?
The trifecta.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
And I like when we do randoms because no theme, just pick something you like.
Just pick something you like.
Yeah.
Pick something you like. All right. Speaking of which, then, we'll go with our first book. We'll go with the 13th Crusaders choice because he's been away for a little while, so we'll go with this one. And it is 100 Bullets. Where's it at? This is under DC, under the Vertigo imprint. Came out for August 99. eBay, you can get this around £30. Go Collect have a 9.6 at $55, which I thought was quite comparative compared to some of the times we get these prices. They seem sometimes it can be wildly different. Written by Brian Azzarello, Eduardo Rizzo is on art, Grant Golish is on colors and separations and by digital. Comedian letters are by Clem Robbins. I will not tell you how my autocorrect tried to change all of those. This book is actually from our new year. This is a book from the year that has just entered our our remit, and it's 1999. So 13th, do you want to take this one away, sir?
Sure, it's funny that we said that we're going with randoms with books that we like. However, I never read this book before
Oh,
until getting ready for this show. It was a very good childhood friend of mine who's been dying for me to read this whole series. And I'm
okay,
like, I'll
cool.
get to it. I'll get to it. I'll get to it. And here we are. So I'm like, you know what? This fell into our limitations, right? With 25 years or
Bang
older.
on. Bang on,
And
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, oh, I didn't know. 100 Bullets falls into that category, and here we are.
Cool. So I hope your friend's going to listen to the show and pass on comments accordingly, right?
Absolutely, he's my only fan.
That's not true. We know there's a certain lady 13th out there that's a fan as well.
Sure.
Bless
Okay.
you.
Yes,
Bless
that's
you.
correct. Yes, two fans. All right. 100 Bullets. Brian Azzarello, I'm familiar with writing the Arkham Asylum stuff for Batman, so
Mm-hmm.
that kind of piqued my curiosity. I had zero knowledge heading into this, so I
Mm-hmm.
thought that was good because it'll be a brand new experience for me, and I can kind of share my thoughts fresh without having talked to anyone else about it.
Mm-hmm. Good call.
Credit to my friend though, he really didn't tell me too much about the book. He's like, you just got to read it. You just got to read it. I know you're gonna like it. So now I'll give my answer on the air. So as far as I'll just get this out of the way. The artwork I did not like too much. In fact,
Wow.
there's a lot of places where I thought the art was just weirded me out a little bit.
Okay.
However, as I went through the book, I got a little more used to it, so I can see how it fits the story.
Mhm.
So I'll give it that. I'm not going to just trash the art and whatnot.
Before we get into the art, sorry to interrupt.
Mhm.
Before we get into the art, I will say right now this is a Vertigo book. So for
Correct.
everyone who's listening or watching the show, we are going to go through the book as we always do. But bear in mind, it's a Vertigo book. It's aimed at mature readers. So if this isn't going to be your cup of tea, scoot forward 13 minutes till we talk about something else. All right.
Wise
Cool.
words from the machine. Yeah, so again, I had no idea what I was heading into. The cover does say suggested for mature readers, and once upon a time, that's what Vertigo was all about.
Baboon. There
Just
it
giving
is.
something different
Mm-hmm.
than your typical Batman, Superman, Justice League story. So I do tend to really like Vertigo books, especially from this era where I thought that they were really getting into some good topics and
Mm-hmm.
just something completely offbeat that you would never expect.
Mm-hmm.
I always found that they can turn something, a normal day-to-day activity, into a really good story, and that's credit to them at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I really do appreciate it. So I already had a good feeling. I'm like, it's a Vertigo book. I'm familiar with Brian Azzarello's works in later times, and I'm like, okay. So, but right away the art kind of threw me off. But as I went on, I kind of saw how it fit
Mm-hmm.
the subjects, if you will, that are mentioned in this book. As far as the writing is concerned, Brian Azzarello really went leaps and bounds to really get the dialects going in here
Perfect.
for the slangs,
Yeah, totally.
and it bothered me a little bit, but I understand it, So
Uh-huh.
it's a little bit of that New York lingo or the jail lingo or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
street
5-0?
lingo,
5-0?
5-0. Yeah, so I completely understand it. To read it, it's annoying. If this were a
Mhm.
film, I just wouldn't even think about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So there's that. But credit to him, I guess, to put all this together. And now when we think about the plot, I think that's the part that was phenomenal. I think it's so simple that it's going to make you think, and it's going to make you think as far as morality and would you actually do it. And the premise of this book really is, if someone has done you wrong and someone gave you a gun with 100 bullets that are untraceable to exact revenge on someone that's done you wrong, would you
To
use it?
to right that wrong. To carry on
To
our
right the
quantum
wrong.
leap.
Correct. So that's really the question that's posed in this book. And at the end, it's like 100 bullets. And then it's like, okay, right away, you're like, oh, someone did me wrong. And if someone gave you the gun and no one would ever come after you for doing, get exacting revenge, then what would you do?
Mm.
And I think that a lot of people would have different answers. So I'll give you mine. I just need one bullet. So
I need more than 100.
yeah,
You know what? I there's No, no, I wouldn't take the bullets. I would be the, I would be. You know what? You live with the
Johnny just
cards
throw
as
the
you
gun.
played. No, no, no. You live with the cards that are played, and you either get your royal flush or you bust out with a pair of twos, and that's kind of how life is. If someone wants to do me wrong, then you know what? Yeah, I get it, but
So
I'm
for
not
the
gonna.
audience, now we just found out Johnny's not going to do that to myself or Bud.
Nope.
That's good news for Bud and me. So we're not on
That's
the list.
not to say I wouldn't pay $13 to whack somebody, but no, I'm just saying.
Yeah, and and I think that's what I like about this story because it's it's not a difficult plot. The, the,
That's a
the,
shout.
it,
That is
the,
a shout. It's quite simple, plot
it's a
wise.
simple plot, and the plot is really a question: would you or would you not?
Mm,
And I don't want to give too much away of the story, but it the main character in here, Dizzy, as she's called, is involved
mm,
in the life of crime.
mm,
Pretty much a good majority of her life, does jail time, comes out, and thus comes a guy out of nowhere and just gives her this offer like, hey, I know everything about you. I know what
mm,
you went through. Here's a gun. Here's 100 bullets. No one's going to touch you. It's untraceable. Stick with the plan that's in this brief that I give you, and don't talk to anybody about it, and you'll be all right. But you have an avenue to exact revenge if you want it.
mm.
And with that alone, I just explained it pretty much in very simply.
Yeah, yeah.
The issue ends on a cliffhanger where
Yes.
she's like, she already met this guy that gave her this opportunity, if you will.
Yeah,
She
yeah.
knows what she's recalling, what she's been through. She's out of jail, and now the issue ends with like, crap, I'm staring at that gun. Now
Yeah.
I want to read issue 2, and I want to keep reading because I want to know yes or no.
Definitely.
And
Yeah.
I think, as I've told you guys before, whenever I do an issue 1, is it going to make me come back to read an issue 2? And in this case, absolutely. Even though I might not be too wild about the art, I understand that it fits the story and the lingo is crazy to read. I want to
Mm.
come back for issue 2. So I absolutely like this book, and I'm definitely want to keep reading it.
I think I think the fact that you bought into the character of Dizzy
Correct.
actually totally transcends the fact that the dialogue is very, very street, very urban, and then the art in itself is grimy and gritty and not straightforward to look at. Uh, Surely that's got to be the key to the writing is despite all those things going on that aren't your cup of tea, you're still going back because you want to know what happened.
Hmm.
That's probably the talent, of the writer of getting you involved in this.
Hmm.
Um, Professor, what was your take on this?
Oh, I agreed with everything that 13 said. I thought that this book and everything that we're going to talk about today. I love that we all picked issue 1s, and and I had never read 2 of those. The ones you guys picked, I never read 100 Bullets, and I never read your pick.
Mm,
So it was interesting that 13 said exactly what I was going to say was I wanted to keep reading. I got to the end of issue 1 and I had been sucked in to the story, to Dizzy and her character and what was going on and the
mhm,
choice that she had to make. And I thought that was really, it was really a powerful piece of writing. But
mhm,
I think most of what Vertigo was putting out around here was
mm,
very, very readable
Hmm.
and suggested for mature readers. But that's really kind of think what we were looking for at the time, right? I
mhm,
was transitioning kind of away from superheroes. This isn't a superhero book, so it was interesting, and I loved it. I thought I didn't have much of a problem with the art. As you guys did, I thought it was dark and muddy intentionally,
mhm,
and there were some of the shadows and what they were doing, and I think you had it on the page earlier with the headlights hitting the sparkle on the Mercedes thing on the car. I
Let's have
thought
a
that
look.
was it was towards the end of the book, I think.
Let's have a
Um,
look.
but I thought that was such a great piece of art.
Yeah,
Um, and like the shadows, like when she had her
yeah.
hand up and you could see the shadows against her eyes. So it's
There
that
you go.
panel
That
right
that
there.
one. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was that's a great panel with the
It is.
lighting and everything. I thought it was
Yeah.
great. So I didn't have a problem with the art, and I think it fit the story, it fit the tone, and it fit everything. And it kind of the first few pages kind of made me think of Frank Miller a little bit.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes,
Yeah,
get
I
it.
agree
Yeah,
100%.
Totally get that.
yeah. But I mean, other than that, once you get past the first few pages, it finds that style all its own.
It
Yeah,
had a Sin
So,
City vibe to me, except
yeah,
in color.
yeah. That's what I thought in the first couple of pages in the jail.
Mm.
So, I thought it was great, and I like I said, I'm going to go find more issues now and
Yeah.
see what I can read, finish the story. So it's good.
What I appreciated about Dizzy is that she went through so many things in life and made so many wrong choices. She's out of jail and is trying to reform herself psychologically. And now she's presented with this opportunity, and it's like, do I commit the ultimate wrong to make things right? And that is a part of that morality question that is brought up with this issue in one issue,
Yeah.
which is phenomenal because that's what issue ones is supposed to do. It's supposed to
Perfect.
It's the
bring
Yeah,
hook.
you into their world, hook
yeah.
you in a little bit, but
Sets the
make you come
table.
back. Yeah, it sets the table and makes you want to read more.
Cool. The art is a little bit off kilter. However, I loved it. I loved the art. It was off kilter. It made me. It's jarring in places. It reminds me of Tim Sale a lot.
Yeah,
There you
yeah.
go. That's another shout. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love Tim Sale. The late Tim Sale. Azarello's dialogue works fantastically well from a tone point of view. The language used is a little bit street, a little bit too maybe street for me to wholly understand. Being a Brit from I
Well,
mean, don't get me wrong, I watch 5 as much as the next guy.
25 years later too.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So I'm a little bit lost, and I get the intention, which I suppose again shows the cleverness of the writing, that it doesn't date itself pop culture wise. Agree with you guys. This is the sort of book that Vertigo used to do really well. Considering it's a totally different book, I kept getting shades of Sandman Mystery Theater. That kind of set up to lead down the line. Azarello's writing, he's a crime writer. This is a crime book. I love how you don't know who the bad guys are. Is it the guy giving her the gun? Is that the devil trying to trick her into stuff? And the guys, the cops that get her later on with the piece, are they the bad guys? Are they in on the killing of who the people who got shot? It's just, you come away with this book with more questions than answers.
I
And I
don't
agree
trust
with
her
you.
own friends that she came back to say, "Hey, I'm
No,
back out of
not at
jail,"
all.
yeah,
Not at
it's
all.
or her brother.
her brother. Yeah, her
Yeah,
brother.
exactly.
No, I think anyone who knows something about what happened, I don't trust any of them. The only
Right.
person you should really trust in this book is Dizzy. Yeah.
Well, I don't even know if you should trust her. I think
Well, we'll find out.
that this whole book was shades of gray, and I didn't think there was a good character in the book. I think they were all bad. So
Yeah.
I don't know. The one in prison who kisses it says, "Pass this on to my boyfriend." That's a nice thing to do as a girl.
I just wonder who the tattoo artist was.
I will say this. Is there a trans element in this book? Because that's the impression I got on page. Where's it at? Where's the
well,
where they get out the book? Where is it? I've seen.
I mean, for the archaic views of we're
No, where
talking trans.
this bit here.
Yeah.
When this is a trans thing, right?
Well, if you read the page before, they talked about when they were all in the car together, they were talking about
Handful of
grabbing it.
nutsack, yeah.
Yeah. And then
This-
and then the next page, it's just that's the reveal. So
yeah,
so to speak.
And I, yeah, and I was surprised and impressed that was incorporated in this book when you're considering this is 25 years ago, and this trans wasn't the same level of awareness as it is now.
Doom Patrol was doing it too.
Yeah,
I mean, this
Doom
is the year that I think they started taking some chances, especially in Vertigo.
Yeah.
So, today it's commonplace. You could read this in Superman. So
cool. And I was like, oh. It caught my eye a little bit, as they say. Excellent. So yeah, first book. Careful what I say there. Yeah, so first book is a resounding success. 13's been gone for a while. He picks out a barnstormer for his return. 13,
Yeah.
well done, sir. Well done indeed.
Well, thanks to my buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well
Thank
done,
you to your friend.
done. Yeah. Thank you, the 12th Crusader. Well, maybe. I
Well,
don't know what you're
sometimes you get good recommendation. That's the cool thing about having friends that read comics, right? Because sometimes
Yeah.
they'll be like, "Hey, I really like this,"
Yeah. Cool.
and
Yeah.
I think you should give it a whirl. And here we are.
Here we are. Well done to 13th friend. Thank you for that. Keep them coming. If you're going to if you're going to suggest books like that, by all means, just drop us a line. And we can go from there for sure. Right, time for an advert. Where should we go? Well, this show dropped yesterday. Features this guy, so check it out.
In that guy.
There you have it, the No Prize podcast featuring this guy, and I'm there as well, pouring scorn on current Marvel stuff. I said before the break, get in touch with us. You can do that. There's the ticker across the bottom there. You can follow Ol'Timers on Twitter. Yes, we're still calling it Twitter because we're Ol'Timers. That's the way it works. So
Yeah.
there you go. There's all our addresses. If you want a book looked at, or you have an idea that you want to talk about, pop it on there, let us know, and we can go there for that. Just remember, the books have to be at least 25 years old. Don't be giving us, Machine, can we do Identity Crisis? We won't be doing that for a good, 5 years more? So there you go.
We'll see. Can't wait.
Can't wait. I like Identity Crisis. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
Right, next up. It is the professor's book, and it is this beauty. I have to say, this is an absolute piece of Marvel history. This one,
And
I'm
not
sure
just for the creators. It's an interesting little book.
From an interesting time in Marvel as well.
Yeah.
This is Daredevil #1, part of the Marvel Knights restructure. It's out from October '98. Again, some similarity in prices. eBay in the UK, you can get this for £20. This is as a 9.4. Go Collect have recent sales of grade 9s at $29. So it's there or thereabouts. The big news of this, of course, is written by Kevin Smith, art by Joe Crusader, inks by Jimmy Palmiotti.
Palmiotti.
There you go.
You got it.
I got there eventually. Brian Halberlins is on colors. Brian Halberlin Studios' Dan Kemp is on colors, and RS and Comic Crafts Liz Grafiotis, great name for I suppose, a letterer, is there on letters. Marvel Knights, or AKA Marvel Does Image. Professor, take it away.
No, so this is actually Marvel's first step out of the terrible dregs they were in just the year before with the the bankruptcy filing and the shit. Really, they were in the shit.
Oh, they were canned. They were absolutely. They were mired. There were dodgy bonds going around the place.
Yeah,
that couldn't keep the lights on.
Yeah.
You know?
So and I can't remember who the editor-in-chief was, or if they had gotten rid of the editor-in-chief by this time, Tom DeFalco. I kind of think that they did, because Marvel Knights was really a Quesada Palmiotti idea that really led to Quesada getting the editor-in-chief job down the road, and I believe Crusader is the one that kind of steered them back in the right direction, focusing more on story, and maybe story and art in equal doses. I think having Kevin Smith on here, who grew up absolutely loving Daredevil. If you ever read anything by Kevin Smith or listen to him talk, he loved Daredevil. And so watching him come over, and he had written at this point Green Arrow, I think, over at DC.
Mm-hmm.
And so he came over to do this. I don't think he was on this book for more than 4 or 5 issues.
Yeah, there was the deadline issues, wasn't there?
He's not a comic book writer. He's a filmmaker. And this was really kind of just a labor of love for him. And every time you see him writing a comic book, it's worth noting, but don't expect him to be around too long. He's just kind of getting it out of his system, right?
I think the fact you've absolutely hit that he's a filmmaker, not a comic book writer, I think that idea reeks through this issue. And I'll point them out when I get to my turn, but off you go.
Yeah. So anyway, Marvel Knights really was kind of a stab at a more mature reader type audience, using already established characters and kind of reestablishing them in a more adult setting. So having Daredevil, and I believe that this was being published concurrently with a regular Daredevil book. Am I right? Or is this was
I don't know.
I can't.
I thought this was the de facto one. I thought this was it.
It might be. It might be. There were a couple of, I think Spider-Man came out in Marvel Knights, but he still had his regular book, so you could pick up one or the other. I know Fantastic Four, Black Panther,
Punisher.
they all had Punisher moved over to Marvel Knights, and you couldn't get him anywhere else.
Silver Sable.
I don't know about Silver Sable.
I'm sure he's in there.
Nick Fury had a Marvel Knights book, I think. But anyway, these books were actually fun. Not that they weren't super adult. It was just maybe the thematics in it. The language is fine. They do revisit Karen Page in this issue, which, if you read past the first issue, by the end of this, it ends very poorly for Karen Page. But this was, 40 years worth of continuity at this point, where we all know what Frank Miller did to Karen Page.
Yeah.
So this was interesting. I think it was very wordy, but I think it was Kevin Smith kind of establishing his Daredevil world, using all the same characters. He doesn't really introduce anybody new. You have Foggy, you have Karen, you have Matt. Not really a ton goes on in this issue. They really kind of bring back, or Kevin Smith really brings back, the religious aspects of the character, and in fact, the girl that he keeps leaving these scenes and kind of chasing, it ends up being kind of like a immaculate conception kind of angle towards the end of this book, where you have a 15-year-old mom who says she's a virgin, yet has a little baby with her, and then disappears at the end and leaves Matt with the baby, which is interesting. And this is another thing when we were talking about first issues. This is another one that made me want to read issue 2 right away. The artwork, I mean, it's Joe Quesada. Prior to this, he had done X Factor for a handful of issues, and then I remembered him from Valiant, right? Ninjak.
Sword of Azrael, if I remember correctly.
He did a little bit of DC too.
Yeah.
But I mean, this was really, I thought this was a really strong offering from Marvel at the time, and really kind of helped turn the ship around as far as bringing back older fans back to Marvel, who may have quit on them. Something like this today would probably help Marvel.
Cool. Yeah. It harkens back to the good old days with all that writing going on, for sure. Sure.
Yep.
13th, if I remember correctly, you're a huge Crusader fan, right? You liked.
I like Joe Quesada, but however, on the other end of the spectrum is Kevin Smith. So I didn't know that until I started reading this. So I'll try to be as pleasant as I possibly can. It's a great cover. I do like the angles. Quesada didn't disappoint with drawing the backgrounds, in my opinion, especially with some of the angles in those panels. So I'm cool with that. As far as the writing is concerned, You guys are absolutely right. Kevin Smith is a filmmaker. He's not a comic book writer, and I felt like he inserted himself in here to some degree, which I don't appreciate.
In
After
what way?
reading,
In what way?
in
Explain.
what way?
Yeah, expand on that for me a little bit, please.
Leaps and bounds, like going to talking about Superman and
Oh yeah.
in a Daredevil book. Clearly, Matt Murdock is blind, so you're heading into here, and then even this letter here with Karen in the beginning on how Matt reacts to that, how Matt goes into the church and reacts to having to chase a girl. If you look at all the inner dialogue,
Yeah.
it screams I and me, and I didn't appreciate that because that's not. I didn't feel like it was Daredevil. So I agree with Bud where you have to go back in time and say what was going on. It's not just about the book, it's about what was going on in Marvel. They had to jumpstart the engine again because Marvel, let's face it, they were one of the biggest companies of all time, and then here we
Mhm.
are, and they're struggling, and they're looking for a pulse.
Mm.
And Daredevil had been around for so long, had been through so much, and I always feel like when I read a Daredevil comic after Frank Miller that
Mhm.
no one has gone back and said, has anything ever matched Frank Miller? And
Mm.
it's hard to do. It's a hard shoe to fill, but you
Mm.
got to attempt anyways. Joe Quesada's art, I've seen better art from him before this issue, so that's my only knock on Joe Quesada on
Mhm.
here. Do I love his art? Sure, but I've seen stronger art. The cover was phenomenal, but I felt like throughout the book it wasn't consistent with something that you would see on the cover. So
Mhm.
again, you can't judge a book by the cover. You can't say, "Oh, that's a really beautiful cover," and I open the book and expect the same.
Mm.
There's a scene in here with Daredevil where he's in a confessional. I didn't even know it was Daredevil or not. It looked more like Guy Gardner to me.
Yeah.
So
I was like, who the hell is this supposed to be? Yeah.
correct. And when you have that element and then the amount of dialogue that's going on in here, then the inner dialogue, I was like,
Mm.
oh my God. But again, at that time, like you guys hit the nail right on the head. The 90s was just all about art. I would want to say from 91 down, strong,
Mm.
art or nothing. And now we're trying to turn the page with a couple of things, more words to read, and maybe something a little more mature. Not something X-rated or M
Mm.
plus or whatever you want to call it, but enough to say that Marvel is back to looking at things from a real world perspective, which was
Okay.
sorely lacking in the previous years. But Kevin Smith, a writer he is not. And as I kept reading these pages, I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like, you got to be kidding me. So, yeah, you're right, but it's a labor of love. But
Yeah.
the key word is a labor because
Hmm.
he's not a comic book writer. He's just a fan.
Yeah, well, that's why he hasn't. That's why he doesn't stay on anything too long.
Yeah.
He gets this idea for the story, and he has to put it out there. Um,
Correct.
so that's, I mean, to me, I appreciate it because I mean, I like Kevin Smith's films, and
Mm.
it's but it's a different animal. I remember liking Green Arrow, but thinking it was a slog too. So
Mm. I owe you an apology. It seems I have got my titles mixed up. Silver Sable was in the Big Guns, not Marvel Knights. So I
they
bow
weighed
down to
big
the
guns.
professor one more time. There you go. I do have a list here. I believe. Let's see. Things included Black Panther, Inhumans, Punisher. There was an Electra book. Um, it says here Marvel Knights Spider Man later on down the line. So it's obviously something that hung around for a while.
Yep.
Can I just
Hmm.
add a comment here too?
You
Because
must have, yeah, go for it.
at this point in time too, you got to remember the competition that Marvel was up against, right? You got other companies, maybe Valiant with some guys that were coming out of that.
Mm-hmm.
Other independent comics were definitely on the rise.
Yep.
You
Mm-hmm.
got DC doing a Vertigo imprint that was just
They were
phenomenal.
killing it. They were
They,
killing it.
yeah, absolutely. And Marvel had to do something.
Yep.
But Kevin Smith,
Yeah. No.
uh,
Big name.
hey, you
Big
listen,
name.
A for effort, A for effort.
Yeah.
To get some eyes on
Um,
the book, sure, if you're a fan of his.
all right, okay. I agree with pretty much everything that you guys are saying. I'm not a huge Crusader fan. And I don't think I've ever been, to be fair. A couple of things that I spotted early on that kind of threw me. Where is it? I've gone through the book a couple of times with you guys. Where is it? There's a page, there's a panel that does my head in. It's the car scene. Where's the car fight? Where is that? Ah, there it is. Right. I don't understand. All right. So it looks to me clearly that that's his left hand through the window. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Agreed. So I don't understand how you go from having your fist clenched to having that fist there. Because that looks like that's his bicep, and his hand's now the wrong way around for where his bicep should be. His thumb should be on the other side, not there.
His middle finger's longer than his forearm.
It's just the whole thing. That it's just little things like that kind of. I'm like, what? What's going on? There's another one later on. Let me just find the page. Where is it? Where is it? Page 18. Ah, yes. I love page 18. Page 18. Check this out. All right. So we've got a young lady here. Got the fishnets on. You know, I'm going to notice the fishnets, right? And you can see she's wearing some sort of pink, purpley top to go with that black skirt, all very nicely unrendered because we're going for the foreground, not the background. And yet, when we see her later on, it's now changed to a boob top.
Oh, interesting.
It's the lighting machine.
And I'm thinking to myself, this is what I was saying about how I think it's about image over substance. Things like this catch my eye, and I'm a little bit wary after that. Other things like situational problems still exist for Matt Murdock. There's a bit in dialogue, and Smith knows how hard it is to write to write Daredevil, because he turns around and says, I have to play at being blind. That's in the dialogue. That's Matt's inner dialogue telling himself he has to play at being blind, because in no shape, way, or form is he blind. It even goes to say, I can't go in. I went to go into the bathroom that was her bathroom and used the hairbrush, and her hair was still in it. Now listen, I get that he's got senses and all that, but how can you tell that's somebody's hair? How can you tell whose dead hair is on the hairbrush?
Apparently, Kevin Smith knows.
It's like
he can smell it.
Well, it's just stuff like this really irks me, you know. And Professor, we've spoken in the past, you know, where Daredevil fights is it Crossbones, and Crossbones says something like, "Read the slogan on my shirt. That tells you who I am." He's like, well, "I can't read it because I'm blind." Yeah,
right.
That's because he's blind. This is akin. This is akin to somebody speaking behind Echo and Echo answering.
Yep.
Which we've seen in comic books. If you're going to have I know he's a superhero, I know he's got powers, but if you're going to have a limitation on there, then you've got to play to that limitation. You know, it's no good, you know, saying Hal Jordan is susceptible to anything yellow, then somebody throws a 2 HP pencil at him that's yellow and it doesn't do anything to him. It should do something to him.
Machine, you call it, what'd you just call it? A limitation. I call it adversity. And adversity is what made Marvel great many, many years ago, because every hero and even villains had something that they needed to overcome. Here, there is no adversity here other than trying to get over Karen. But that's not a problem, because as we go on later through the book, it's business as usual. I mean, he could have, with his resources or whatever, he could have gone after her and said, "Hey, listen, I think you're making a mistake. Pick up the phone and call her." You know, a number of options that were available in the 90s. Maybe she had a pager, just beep her.
Karen Pager.
Karen Pager.
Karen Pager.
Nope.
I knew you guys would get it.
I would say about the artwork, you know what Jack Kirby said, right? He said something like, "We're not trying to paint the Sistine Chapel."
I get that, but there has to be a level of, I suppose, continuity.
Consistency.
Kirby used to mess up his own Captain America shield. all the time.
Hmm.
Well, I get that. I mean, that shield is particularly tricky to draw. But for Christ's sake, you should be able to know which way a hand goes on an arm.
Wow.
Just saying. Just saying.
I bet Kirby messed that up a few times too.
Yeah. I was saying before the show, recently in my day job, I found myself in delivering in a library. And as I was waiting for the guys to turn up for the session, they have a graphic novel section, and they had Essential Daredevil in there. And I picked this up as part of that, and I was thumbing through it. So it was quite ironic to see it pop up on my schedule. I was like, oh, yeah, I remember this. So I can see why Marvel went this way. I absolutely do. Kevin Smith was a huge name, still is. You are going to get people flocking to get this book. Excuse me, because of that. Does it work as a comic book? Not wholly. Does it get interest into Marvel and get them out of the doldrums? Absolutely. And that was the main.
The other thing too was in issue 1. So issue 1 for a hero like a legacy hero would definitely also attract attention. So
well, and that's exactly what they were trying to do, is attract attention, and they got big media headlines with Kevin Smith writes comic book. So
right, okay.
I think I threw out the newspaper that day, Professor.
I didn't realize there was such animosity around Kevin Smith's writing. I was like, yeah.
Do you guys know how much I hate Vandal Savage, right?
yes.
I have heard a rumor about that.
Yeah, Kevin Smith is probably about the same or a little more.
Okay.
All right.
I'm glad I'm back.
Mallrats is great though, right?
Who?
Mallrats. The movie Mallrats is good, right?
Sure.
What's that TV show that's on HBO that where a comic book shop in New Jersey? What's that one? That's all right.
Comic book man?
Yeah, that's all right, isn't it? That's good fun.
It is good fun.
Secret Trash.
Secret Stash.
Oh, my bad.
I'm not running the ticker tape again just because we don't want to get sued. That's fine. Thank you. All right, last up, it's me. So I've gone from the sublime all the way down to the ridiculous, to a book that I have to say I have never read before. But at the time, I kept seeing shed loads of the girl in question. And it's J. Scott Campbell. And I like J. Scott Campbell's art. So it makes no idea or no common sense why it took me so long to get to this book. It is Gen 13. There you go. This is the first Gen 13. Number 1 from February 94. eBay, you can get this as £10. Watch that grade on that, though. Go collect, have a grade 9 at $20. So, this is the height of, I suppose, Image trying to do superheroes. So it's written by Jim Lee and Brandon Chow. Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah?
Choi. J. Scott Campbell is on arts with Alex Garner helping out on inks. Joe Choidor is on colors, and Chris Alepios, is on letters. When I remember looking at this book, or when I kept seeing her around, the Fairchild character, I always thought this was art over substance. And we had a bit of a gaffe early on. I looked at the wrong book, and it was purely art over content. This is very similar to that, although there is more of a story on this. There's no art credit for this, but surely to God, these first pages, there is hints of Jim Lee in this, or is that just me?
I'm with you on that.
They were trying to make this
Make it
art
look like Jim Lee.
Yeah. It's from his studio, right? So,
yeah. So, but then you get Campbell, who is like the opposite of Jim Lee, where Jim Lee is all brawn and muscle. Campbell is all willowy. And there is an element of, I suppose, cheesecake to this. Again, very wordy. But it's just a little bit, I don't know, is it too high? Is it too wordy for the type of book it's trying to be? It is an issue 1, so there's a lot to get through. Of course, things take a turn for the uncouth with an X-Men-esque style fighting. There's babes, God knows where in this scheme of this fighting dojo, which has got green backgrounds and everything. God knows where this weight room came from. Straight away, it's like, whoa, what's going on there?
That's a whoa flex.
Yeah, yeah. I almost pulled a muscle. Um,
Jesus.
I'm
No
sorry.
wonder your hips hurting.
Yeah, is it too early for this? It's 5 p.m. my time. Remember. I like Scott Campbell's art. But I understand why he does pin-ups and covers now rather than sequential stuff. Um, this is before he did Danger Girls, which itself is again very similar. Girls in predicaments. Was it Angel and the Ape did something very similar? We've talked about Cheesecake before. The guys, this group of teens have been captured or they've been inducted into a school. They're trying to activate. Excuse me. The bad guys are trying to activate their powers to become the next generation of powered characters. There's already been 12 of these generations, so this makes them Gen 13, and that's kind of how it works. Of course, there's some nefarious goings on. A mysterious overlord that tries to. Mr. Lynch is in there trying to get some information about his son. Lo and behold, Fairchild's powers start to kick in, and that's when things start to go wrong. Now, Professor, you said earlier that the number ones, the key is to make you want to read it again. Despite the cheesecakeness of the art, despite the kind of formulaic twist that goes on with this, I'm going to turn around and say this. I want to know what happens in the next issue. I'm like, you've piqued my curiosity enough to find out what's going on, especially after I've read something from the series later on down the pipe. I want to know how we get from there to where I read previously. Is it the best book? No, it's not by any stretch of the imagination. Is it a victim of its time? Is it of its time? It most certainly is. And if you like your image books from that period of time, I mean, what you had this, you had Wildcats, Cyberforce, Spawn, Savage Dragon.
Team 7 is
Team 7.
and they reference that heavily in this.
Yeah, because the Wildstorm heroes are in that universe, aren't they? The Wildstorm.
Well,
universe.
they mention Youngblood in this as well, so it is what it is.
You look so happy looking at this book, I must say.
The one thing that stuck out for me when I was reading this was I was like, is this the first thing J. Scott Campbell ever drew? Because, like you said, he's mainly a cover artist now, probably because he can't keep up with the pace of a monthly, right? But the artwork looked very off to me. The eyes, he draws weird eyes. Everybody looks Asian. I don't know if they were supposed to be Asian, but in some panels, Fairchild looks fine, and then like in that issue, like what her eyes are on top of her head. I don't know. It's
going for the Peter Parker look there, isn't she? With the whole glasses thing, and when she gets her powers,
until they and then of course her powers made her boobs 10 times bigger by the end of the book.
I think they make all of it 10 times bigger. I think that's the impact, the idea.
No wonder you want to read issue 2.
I'm not 100% sure on that one, to be fair.
What happened to her bra?
Well,
I don't know.
She's asleep. She's in a Nike.
Okay.
I don't know.
I
didn't write it. I'm not the editor. I'm just saying.
I thought so as far as the writing goes, and we have to remember Jim Lee's writing this too. So it's not the strongest writer in the world. He's very much visual. So you're right. Image is where we've been talking about this a lot. Image was definitely art over substance. Agreed. So, but he did have an idea between Wildcats and Team 7 and all that stuff that he's working Gen 13 into his overall vision for his universe. So if you're a Jim Lee fanatic, fits in fine. But yeah, you're every panel that you look at, it's like the characters have their clothes like draped on them. There's no, everything's like there's nothing loose except for, but
Yeah.
anyway, what is it? Grunge. He went
Grunge.
from where he went from wearing what looked like a hospital gown to a super tight.
Yeah. Yeah. Not wrong.
like,
Not wrong.
so I
Crazy,
don't know.
isn't it?
And yeah, but I mean, it's interesting. I thought.
Cheese cheesecake. We all like cheesecake, but I think if you eat too much of it, you start feeling a bit queasy, and that's probably how I feel about this book. To be honest, in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
13th. The final 13 words for Gen 13. How many 13s can I get in one sentence?
First
Probably
of all, it's a
13 of them.
great title for obvious reasons.
Well, you like the word
Um,
Gen, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I agree with you guys on Jason Scott Campbell, and I think it's kind of the Kirby effect, right? Because once upon a time, Jim Kirby was drawing Marvel, and then everyone had to emulate his style.
Jim Lee.
And in the
I get
90s,
to. All right. Okay.
and then in the 90s, it was with Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, and all those guys.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
Everyone wanted to keep the tradition going, especially if you're working for the company they founded.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So you have also dabs of McFarlane, dabs of Jim Lee or Rob Liefeld, and everyone else. So no matter where you went, and the 90s would not be the same without it. So one of the things, again, with an issue one is attention grabbing with this cover, where you get Caitlin Fairchild on the cover. How is that not going to get you to take a look at it? It's another issue number one from Image, which projects success for the 90s. If you keep pumping out new issue ones and you keep pumping out new ideas and new teams, this was kind of like the golden age for Image here
Mm-hmm.
as far as superhero books are concerned. So yeah, it can be cheesecake. It does make me want to go back for issue two. I think that the premise here, or the plot, reminded me a lot of the old Harbinger books for Valiant,
Well, that's a
with
good call.
young teens coming out with latent powers and things like
Mm,
that, and getting exploited left and right for a government project or not, or malicious means. So this had a lot of Harbinger vibes for me, and that was a title that I did like. But Valiant,
mm.
unfortunately, was not strong at this point in time. Image was. So this had a lot of old Valiant vibes for me.
I've got news for you, and I'm really sorry to break this to you, 13th, but Valiant has never been that strong. It is.
Well,
I think Valiant have put up a valiant effort, but unfortunately, Ninjak can only carry the comic book company so far.
well, these days too, right? So that's going to bring me to my next point, right? The market was there, right?
Mm?
Because remember, we don't have the level of media that we get today. Back
Mm-hmm.
then, Valiant or otherwise, they did sell a lot of copies. If you want to do a comparison to today, the audience just isn't there. And Image definitely capitalized on this. And this is where we can get into this debate all day long about Marvel was starting to slip. They struggled. We just talked
Mm-hmm.
about it a few minutes ago. Image
True.
was totally capitalizing on there's still a market out there.
Mhm.
And they did it mainly with art. Now, here comes a book. I'm not saying that this book turned things around, but they attempted to put some more dialogue in here,
Mm,
so there's more of a plot and there's more of introduction. Get to know these people because we're going to do something with them, and they
mm,
did. And there are many issues of Gen 13, and Caitlin Fairchild has appeared in a number of issues. So
mm,
clearly there was a following even from this book, cheesecake or otherwise.
mm.
The plot, I think, was strong enough to warrant someone to go and want to buy a second issue. I'm
Okay.
very surprised you didn't mention that uh, Caitlin Fairchild kind of looked a little bit like Deb Whitman in some panels, but maybe that's
Well, I wasn't going to say that, but I've already had my fishnet quarter for today. I didn't want to bring out my Deborah Whitman quarter as well. I'm saving that for when she makes her start. Amazing return in Ultimate Spider-Man somewhere down the line.
yeah. My last words for this book is it screams 90s. There's
Yeah,
no
it's
doubt
of its
about it.
time. It is of its time for sure.
Yeah.
So while you were paging through that the last few pages there, Gen 13,
Uh-huh.
I had a question.
Can we put the book back up?
Yeah. Put the book back up and get to one of the pages where it had the security guards that jumped in on the main characters towards the end.
Is this you going to mention the X-head?
No. Well, yeah. So this
That
panel
one?
here, yeah, the one in the middle of the page. and that security guard, and but basically all the security guards in this issue, is that a different artist? Is that
I
not
don't
J.
know.
Scott Campbell? That looks more like either a Jim Lee or someone else. That does not look like J. Scott Campbell drew that. It looks
Yeah.
way too technical. All the other art in this whole book is fairly simple, right? And this looks
Right.
super complicated and technical, and the guns and the pack, the pockets and bullets
Yeah.
and everything. That doesn't look like Campbell's art. It looks like someone else did it. And
Definitely.
that was
Yeah.
actually that was jarring for me when you were flipping. And I was like, this looks weird. This looks like he didn't do the art. And even in this panel, it looks like Fairchild,
Yeah.
like he drew Fairchild, but then someone else drew the security guard, or maybe redrew it. Marvel was famous for that, but I mean,
Mm.
I mean, this is a studio, right? So
Yeah, it's interesting. You know what? Bring up a really cool point. Let me go back to my notes. So Alex Garner is the inker on this book, and from what I know, and I'm not a Gen 13 expert, but he's also the inker later on in the later book that I read. So it could be one of those kind of Jim Lee Scott Williams deals where Campbell does the foreground with the main with the curvy girl and whatnot, and then the technical aspect is just lined out and then it goes over at that point. But you got to think also. I mean, let me just make this the right size so I can see it again because I've just shrunk it down too far. Right, okay. So, do you think the same for the control room then, where she sat there,
yeah.
or?
No, I didn't really think so much for the control room. It was just that security guard, and then in the early, I think the first couple of pages, it just jumped out at me that it looked different.
You're right. He looks very much
the,
like Maverick. He looks like Maverick
Mhm.
from the X-Men comics, right?
A little bit.
Yeah.
I think in that Washington D.C. scene with Ivana or whatnot, there's a couple panels in there that very heavy resemblance to Jim Lee.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's no way that that's Jason Scott Campbell. And if it isn't, that's fine. I don't think anybody back then cared. Yeah, right there, like the top middle panel, the next page, right
That
there.
one?
Yeah, that totally looks more Jim Lee to me than
Yeah.
anything else. We've seen that look and pose before out of X-Men books when Jim Lee was over there, but maybe it's just me.
Excuse me.
Not that it matters. I still like the book
No.
overall.
No. It's interesting. It's a different. I think there are different flaws to this book for sure, and I get that from page one. With these bulky characters here, they are not. That guy is not a J. Scott Campbell character, not at all. I don't think, but
maybe a collaborative effort,
maybe
but not
maybe
total.
maybe
The Merry Image bullpen.
The three images.
Merry Image bullpen, MIB. Oh, Men in Black.
What's that stand for? All right, okay.
Merry Image bullpen. Now I know.
Before we go absolutely crazy, guys, thank you so much. Three interesting books, I think, when you consider where they came from. You've got the Vertigo, super serious book. You've got Daredevil, trying to bring that seriousness to Marvel, and then you've got just crazy going on at Image, and that's kind of like how that's worked, I'm afraid. So no, interesting books, one and all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Johnny. It's fun doing a rando episode.
I like randos. I must admit, I do like randos. Right, that's it for this week. Don't forget to check out the UCPN for all your favorite shows, including Professor
No Prize Podcast, all about the MCU, Disney Plus, and we talk some comics too.
Excellent. That is Crusader.
Don't forget to check out the Definitive Crusade, where we talk about everything DC Comics of today, not yesteryear.
Cool. And of course, if you want to talk about or listen to creators talk about their Kickstarters or their books coming out, don't forget to check out Outside the Panels. There you go. All on UCPN. What more could you want? Cool.
Issue 2 of Gen 13.
Well, I'm gonna sort that out in a minute, I think. From that point on, I'm gonna go and get some dogs ready for the big game later. That's how that works.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. As for everyone else, I've been your host, Johnny Machine Hughes. Gentlemen, pleasure as always. Adios.